Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today I'm bringing you a Kickstarter preview of Runar from Ludus Magnus Studios, a surprisingly deep and complex campaign-based skirmish game. Which you know, sounds a little bit odd, right? Because skirmish games are your head-to-head or one versus multiple playing style games where you're getting a tribe of people, you're spawning them out here onto the board, you're stabbing each other in the throats, grabbing whatever victory points you can, completing whatever scenario objectives you have in front of you, and there's a winner by the end. But in Runar, that's not where the story finishes. Instead, with your friends, you'll be playing through a series of 5 different levels or scenarios, with variation through the middle section of those that gets determined based on whoever won the last session, or randomly if you happen to lose to the AI-driven nemesis creatures that spawn onto the board. You'll be playing through these 5 games to determine not only a session-to-session victor, but also an overall victor for the entire game as it stands. It's a campaign-based skirmish game in a accessible, approachable way, but in a really unique flavor, and it allows you to not only draft and select your tribe of different Viking warriors to bring down here onto your board, but also allows you to customize them with special abilities and other unique artifacts that you're able to collect from session to session or scenario to scenario. Along with that, every single one of your characters, every single one of your Viking warriors that you bring into your tribe has the opportunity to actually turn into more advanced version of themselves, which they'll do between the first session all the way through to the 5th session. So every game round, you're going to have a brand new scenario objectives, and upgraded gear, units, items, abilities that you get to start to utilize. So you'll learn how your unique faction works. And then once you've played through 5 sessions with your friend, you'll restart at the beginning, going down potentially variable pathways, but also choosing and drafting a brand new set of Viking troops to actually engage in the battle with. That's where Runar starts to really stand out and shine. It's approachable, it's campaign-driven, it's interesting, but it also allows you to continue going back through, changing up not only the puzzle and the pathway that you've decided to follow, but also the tribe or the warriors that you're venturing forth with. And if you want it to be a little standalone, head-to-head skirmish game, it also excels at doing that, especially once you already know the game. It's not required for you to play through all 5 sessions every single time. Instead, if you're familiar with the game, you can actually go ahead and draft and assign a certain value to each player to allow you to upgrade or gain certain pieces of gear and just go head-to-head for an endgame style skirmish match if you decide that's what you want to do. Now, there's a lot of things going on here, and in this preview video, I want to give you a sense of how the game actually plays and flows. So I'm going to start by giving you an overview of everything you see out here in front of you, and then I'm actually going to walk you through the general game flow. This is the breakdown of how the game is structured and how it progresses forward, and then we're going to talk about some of the legacy or campaign elements here, the stuff that starts bridging you into scenario 2, 3, 4, and 5. So, what do we have in front of us? First off, I have my own personal player board, and some of this stuff is set up more for display than it is for an actual in-game scenario. You'll notice that as we go through, but just keep that in mind. I have my own personal player board here, which is going to have the 3 characters drafted into my troop, Harfan, Helga, and Bjorn. These should technically be out on the board if we were playing, so these miniatures would be placed out here onto the main table. Now, on my player board, I have my own set of deck of cards. There's 10 cards representing each set of my characters, so 30 cards total in this stack. This is the life force and also the special abilities and assistant abilities that I have with each one of my main warriors. Now, over the top here, we have locations where we actually steal cards from other players when we deal damage to them. That's how you start scoring some in-game victory points, because each session is determined based on the number of victory points you're actually able to score. We are going to have a handful of cards, some resource trackers down here depending on the shards that we've been able to pick up, and a whole arsenal of potential weapons, items, and other unique abilities that I can actually attach to my different characters. Now, as we spawn out here onto the main board, you're going to have the giant battlefield. This is where we're going to have locations, scenario objectives. We're going to have shards and traps that are down here on the board that'll deal damage and be some of your endgame victory points, the stuff that's actually driving the finishing of the game. We're going to have all of our characters, including some of our enemy characters and some of the AI boss characters that, well, exist out here will activate at the end of every round and will slowly start ripping you and your opponents apart. Now, granted, you can also defeat them in order to get some bonuses from attacking and taking down the AI, but for the most part, throughout the course of the game, they become more of a puzzle and a nuisance to solve than necessarily your primary objective. Over to the side here, we're going to have a board that is only used if you have a scenario that's involving the AI system. Now, technically, the scenario that I have set up here and the landscape that I have set up here does not necessitate an AI-driven faction. However, I did want to be able to show them off. So I have them set up at the moment. Over here is going to be their personal AI board with 3 different characters that are going to be spawning and interacting depending on where you have them up there on the tableau. Their own victory point track, because they can drive endgame themselves based off of their own score, which they get from killing you, collecting shards, and a few other scenario objectives that might be specific to the AI faction that you're playing, and their own little resource chart here. Just like you have your death pool, they're going to have theirs, because as they rip you apart, they'll be stealing cards from you and your opponents in order to, well, like we've already established, combine those and score additional victory points. Over here on this side is going to be the actual game board. Now, this board is going to be controlling the victory points that we have across the bottom. It's going to be controlling the round objective and scenario or event conditions that happen as we actually start to play. You see, every time there's going to be shards or not enough villains out here on the main board, which we'll tell by checking one of these tracks here on the side that'll slowly start closing off, we're going to be spawning cards here. These will toss more shards out onto the board, along with more enemies onto the board, and it'll drive endgame or victory point or victory condition. So if you're playing a 2, 3, or 4 player game, the length of the game will be determined by this category or this row. This row is full of locations where event cards will be placed down into the tableau. These will score differently at the end of the round. They'll also potentially add in-game boons or in-game negative effects, banes, I suppose, depending on which ones you have sorted through here. This deck is going to be composed of a stack of variable cards with 1 event card shuffled in every 6 or every 12, something like that. That card is then going to be shuffled again so that it could be a whole 12 cards away or right next to each other, and you'll start cycling through that as you start stealing shards off of the tableau here and as you all start driving endgame. The more resource you take, the more kills you have, the more enemies you wipe off the board, the more this is going to continue to progress quickly and efficiently. But that is your objective. You are trying to score those victory points. You do want those shards for endgame points and for endgame resources so that you can actually buy gear and weapons and equipment. Now, some of the other stuff you'll be seeing is these spires here. These spires are going to be areas that you actually build across the tableau. Now, technically, everyone's base spire should be placed down here in a designated location. I wanted to show a few of them built, so I actually left my set over here so I could actually show this off to you, but this is going to be a piece of artwork showing a jutting statue of a Viking warrior along with a flame standing proudly on the top, and as you construct every piece of this artifact, you're actually going to get in-game bonuses relating to that, whether that's a special unique card that goes into your deck or goes into your hand that's going to give you more cubes that you can spend as actions or resources to use as you play the game, or potentially just some extra boons that will help you get some endgame victory points as the game progresses. This is something that you'll be constructing and also something that you'll be tearing down from your opponent's constructions. Now, the last 2 things that I want to point out is going to be this whole roster of characters that we could draft from. There is an arsenal of potential playable characters that as you're jumping into the game, you'll be able to go through a unique drafting system to go ahead and select which one you'd like to play with or which 3 you'd like to play with, taking 1 character at a time from the opponents that are sitting around the table and potentially trading some other in-game bonuses based off of that. And we're going to have our actual scenario card, which is going to be the end-game conditions, the setup, the victory points that you're looking for, any special objectives that you have, so on and so forth. So that's the setup. That's what we have in front of us. Now, when the gameplay actually starts to run and flow, you'll find that depending on who you're playing with, this could be a heavy tactical skirmish-based game where you're trying to rip each other's throats out and driving endgame by attacking the enemies and attacking each other until you have everyone exhausted. Or this could actually be more of a positional skirmish game where you're trying to grab resources, erect your tower, and slowly score based off of in-game victory conditions, and not necessarily looking to drive game by attacking every other player across the board. This could be a standby, a little bit more of a passive game with a threat of war always existing, or this could be a helter-skelter, rush, mad dash for brutality and gore as Viking mythology dictates that it must be or should be. Although you are fighting other Vikings, so I suppose this is Viking tribes going head-to-head over some land grabs or some fiefdoms or something like that. That being said, let's go ahead and walk through how the actual gameplay flow, the round structure, works. And it's broken down into 6 general phases, which I have to display over here. The tactical phase is going to be the general setup and maintenance. Here you're going to spend some of the resource cubes that you have, which I'll show you down here on the bottom of my board. You can see the various different resource cubes that I have available to me. Every time I play an active card, I'll actually be generating more resource cubes into my main tableau. This will give me the opportunity to spend these on, well, some of the actions I'm about to go through. Let me see if I can pull a card that's showing my general tactics. So I could spend a white or red to go ahead and do a coordinate action. Let's see here. Let's try this out. Let's see if you're able to see everything that I'm showing off here. So I could spend a white or yellow cube to do a coordinate action. This is going to allow me to cycle the hand of cards that I have, giving me more variability and flexibility going into the next session, or allowing me to activate one of the units that I didn't have cards for to start with. Your units will all need to have a card played in order to be the active unit that you're using on your turn, so this is important. You have charge, which is going to allow you to move by spending a green or white cube. You have fortify. Fortify is going to allow you to actually strengthen and add shields to your units. This is good if you're being attacked quite a bit. It's important you have build. This is going to be spending a certain number of resources to establish another level of your spire, of your Viking monument. This will also get you in-game bonuses. And we have equip. These are going to be free actions that allow you to grab, drop, and cycle any of the different type of gear cards that you have on any of your units. This is important because some of these gear cards will be picked up during the course of the game, and they can be really fun and really powerful. The second phase is going to be the actions phase. And there are actually quite a few actions in this game, so we'll try to go through them quickly here. The action phase. If you have green cubes, you could do movement, you could push, and you could throw. So this is going to allow you to move, it's going to allow you to throw items like different shards across the side of the board so other people can pick them up or other people can't pick them up, and you'll also potentially destroy them in the process, or it's going to allow you to push, which is shove other units away from you. We have actions phase with blue cubes, or you have your blue cubes, which are going to give you your strength actions. You can collect, attack, or trigger. So collect and attack. Collect is going to allow you to grab some shards. Attack is going to allow you to punch another player in the throat. And trigger is going to allow you to actually move one of the traps to another location that could be on top of one of your opponents that might snap and might deal damage to them as well. Sort of one of those aggressive throwing a bear trap in their face type of actions. We have our instinct abilities. They're going to be our yellow cubes. This is going to allow us to collect. These are going to be collecting yellow shards, whereas the blue action was collecting blue shards specifically. Defense and response. Defense is going to be a reactionary thing. Response is going to be a reactionary thing. Defense allows you to, well, block some of their attacks, and response is going to actually have you hand them one of your powerful cards, one of your unit cards, without actually getting completely knocked out and destroyed. And then finally, our white cubes are going to be our wild cubes. They can be used for nearly anything. They're going to have switch, destroy, and collect. Switch is going to be switching the active unit that you played, depending on the card that you put down. Destroy is going to allow you to break down one of your opponent's towers. Remember, we were building those with the tactical phase up top there. And collect is going to allow you to collect any type of shard across the board, blue or yellow, letting you boon one of those 3 categories, or 2 categories. And then finally, every character will have a set of skills. These skills may be on the cards. You can see them displayed over here on my character traits. If I have that corresponding skill shown on the card for that character that I played, I can then activate that skill or that special ability. Now, each one of our characters also has a second side to their card, meaning they do get stronger depending on which ones you've leveled up and which cards you're playing down, so keep an eye on that. Now we're going to have the support phase. The support phase is going to be where you actually go through the process of taking the active card that you played down, For instance, here, if I played Helga, she not only had that unique ability, which would have allowed her to trigger her unique ability, but she also would have been giving me a blue cube, and I'll cycle her down to my support location here. The artwork matches up very nicely, and that's going to go ahead and spawn me another blue cube down here in the bottom, and then this location is back available again for me to play one of the 3 cards that I have left in my hand, choosing and activating another lead character and using whatever special abilities or cubes that I have available to move them and maneuver them around the board. Only one main character will be activating from sequence to sequence, unless, of course, you have special abilities that break that flow. After that, moving down here to the Destiny phase. The Destiny phase will be triggered depending on the number of shards and the number of defeated enemies you have in this location over here. Every shard that we collect will actually spawn and go over to this location, bumping our stat down here on our board, and then ending up here at this bottom point. If we have too few shards on the board, and if there are shards over here, we'll end up spawning and drawing a card from this Destiny's location. This could be a card that is an event card like this one that'll go down here into the timeline, that'll progress endgame and continue escalating the nature of the game, or could be one of our standard cards. It's actually going to be spawning another unit or another shard out here into one of the regions of the board, depending on our perspective as a player. Now, on top of that, if you're playing with enemies or the AI system built into the board, these cards will also start spawning bad guys, and you as the active player will get to choose where those bad guys go out onto the tableau, depending on the different sword symbol up there at the top of the card. So, that's that phase. Moving down to the Nemesis phase. If you're playing with a Nemesis, if you're playing with the AI that's here in some of the scenarios, not in all of them, they will spawn going in the order that they are on that tableau. They'll then move, attack, steal, do whatever they're doing, depending on what their AI card says that they should do. It's pretty simple. You just follow the order of events, order of operations. After you've processed all of the AI, you're going to be moving to the end turn phase where you do general cleanup, you reset back up, and you move back to the tactical phase where once again you're spending any of the shards that you have to reposition, navigate your hand of cards, try to equip or unequip items that you've been able to grab, and get yourself into the best position possible to, well, continue progressing the game. So, that's the general flow. That's the general structure of this game. Now, how does it move into the campaign phase? Well, after you've resolved one full story, one full campaign, you'll end up with a few bonuses. Like, for instance, here. The winner of this campaign will earn the card Soltar. This is going to be a special artifact card that'll be an equipment card that they can add to their tableau or add to their units. Every unit can carry a maximum of 1 item. That is one way that it progresses. Second, we're going to be changing the scenario out for another scenario. The winner of this session will get to decide which scenario they go to next, which is another unique way that you can actually manipulate the story of the game and choose something that might be more advantageous to the tribe that you've actually selected. You'll also be able to go through and select one of your cards. So here I have Harfin, and this card flips back over to a more advanced side or a more advanced style of that same character card. Now, all the cards do this, so you get to decide which characters you want to upgrade for which scenario that you're approaching, and that's going to be carried over into the next session as well. Finally, you'll be able to spend whatever left resources you have on various different items. Now, there's going to be an item marketplace. You'll go around in order, grabbing and buying as many as you want, making sure that you're paying the appropriate cost. Now, these items are going to be the different pieces of gear that you can equip to your characters. So as you're moving from scenario to scenario, you'll also be upgrading your characters. You'll have new win conditions. You'll have new story arcs. You'll have new items and gear that you either won by sheer brutality in combat or you've been able to secure from the marketplace between sessions. You'll attach those to your characters and you'll venture back out in here into a brand new unique setup and scenario because the lead player gets to choose what the actual board setup looks like. There's a whole roster of potential combinations that you could pick and choose from. You'll set up the board and you'll dive back into another skirmish game with more advanced mechanics and an evolving game system. This adds a ton of depth to the skirmish genre of games, and I actually am really impressed and really like how the campaign promises to continue growing and progressing. Now, I don't have a full copy of the game. I'm still working with a prototype, so I haven't been able to see the variable pathways and networks that this game starts spiraling down, but just based off of the premise and the cards that they've actually given me right now to start playing around with, it's a straightforward action selection system. It's a straightforward card system. It's a little bit of resource management. It's deciding what's going to be the best move you can make with whatever random cards you have in your hand, while also spending resources to control for that as much as possible. It's pretty straightforward. But when it comes down to the combining of effects and abilities, the special abilities your characters gets, and the way that they start progressing from campaign session to campaign session, there's a lot of promise here, and it's actually really well done and really well presented. On top of that, the miniatures are gorgeous. Characters are super cool. If you love Viking games, I mean, you're going to be getting a whole roster of really awesome Viking minis, a Viking theme, and a battleground to actually wage war with your opponents in, which for me fits the Viking archetype that I'm looking for. I'm not looking for like a peaceful sailing Viking game. I'm looking for something that feels earthy and brutal, and that's what Runar is and what Runar does. So yeah. That's Runar. That's a general preview, a general overview. Let me go ahead and grab the flavor text. This is a Quackalope video after all, and we like staying true to what we do here, which is always gratuitous flavor text at some point in the video. But outside of that, let me know. Do you have any questions? Are you intrigued by this? Are you excited about this? I've had a good time. I really have enjoyed diving in and learning the rules and the mechanics and the systems and what they're bringing forth here. Personally, I'm really excited to get a final copy of this and looking forward to watch it launch on Kickstarter and see all the cool stuff they unlock along the way. Runar. An elderly man of intermediate age appears to be wandering aimlessly through the northern lands. His hunt for the stones he himself has christened runic gems seems to have no end in sight. It is clear from his stories that these stones have a concentration to Asgard and serve as a link between the 9 worlds bound together by Yggdrasil. He travels through the northern lands whispering stories of treasures formed by the Devar themselves into the ears of jarls, counts, and regents. He told the story of a legendary runic gem greater than all the others and imbued with power of a seer. Hidden on a mysterious northern island, it's called the Runar. Altharion entertained the jarl and the longhouse guests with one of his tales. Up into the gray sky, they saw Odin's derrick together with the other gods. They were coming to save the beloved Mannheimr from the cruel invasion of Jotunn. I am not good at some of these northern Scandinavian names. The gods leapt from the sacred ship, gliding on their shields shrouded in sparks of fire. I've spent my entire life searching for the place they landed and where the battle took place, the location of the Runar, and I am fairly sure I have found it. Altharion's tale was suddenly interrupted by the sound of horns blowing. From the port of Rockslide of Rosligdy, the Drekars of each clan sail out to sea, with their most valiant and skilled heroes aboard. The hunt for the mysterious runic gems has begun. Other than the butchered reading of some of those unpronounced sounds in the English language, that's the general story, right? We're coming down to this ancient battleground where the remnants of these shards still existed, and we're going to war. We're going to smash into each other, and we're going to hopefully steal them all for ourselves. It's never as simple as that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Whatever the case, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. See you next time.